I am Emily Brandt, as Kyle mentioned, and I am so excited to introduce our speaker today. Dawson Church is a researcher and an author of 3 best-selling books, The Genie in Your Genes, Mind to Matter, and Bliss Brain. He founded the National Institute of Integrative Healthcare to study and implement promising evidence-based psychological and medical techniques. And he shares how to apply the breakthroughs of energy psychology to health and personal performance through EFT Universe, which is one of the largest alternative medicine sites on the web. There's so much to say about Dawson that it's hard to share it all, but I'm so excited. I first became familiar with Dawson Church about 10 years ago. I believe it was through the Tapping World Summit. He shared things on that as an EFT expert, and then I read his book, The Genie in Your Genes, and thoroughly enjoyed that. That's about epigenetics. That's phenomenal, and I recommend that. And I have since gotten his other 2 books, and I also learned about his meditation, eco meditation, last year, and for me that's been amazing. It really is something special. I wasn't able to meditate before that until I found that, and it's just amazing, so I recommend it. And I'm excited to hear what Dawson has to share with us this morning. So thank you for joining us bright and early from California.
It's such a pleasure, Emily. And that experience you had of not being able to meditate before and then using eco meditation and being able to meditate is really a powerful experience. And the good news is that hardly anybody actually can meditate. It's really hard to do what my meditation teacher told me when I was 12 or 13 years old. And he said, close your eyes and still your mind. Well, the first part's easy. I can do that. But still my mind, it's pretty much impossible because the human mind and the human brain was not meant to be still. The human brain is designed by evolution to be active all the time. Even when you're sleeping, a little sound will wake you. And I look at the whole arc of evolution, 1 billion years of more and more elaborate life forms on Earth, and nothing about the process of reptilian evolution or mammalian evolution suggests that our mind's going to be still. In fact, if you can think back to your ancestor 100,000 years ago, if you pictured your distant ancestor sitting there at the end of an ice age and he or she was foraging and needing to bring food home for the tribe and respond to opportunities as well as threats, the more active their mind was, the more they succeeded, the more they were able to notice things in the environment that were threats and respond to them and pick up on opportunities in the environment as well. And if you had an ancestor who had a really peaceful mind, really quiet brain, could just sit there with their eyes closed, the way we've just done now for the last 15 minutes, that was the person who got eaten by the predator. And only the person who was paranoid and suspicious and looking around all the time survived. So our brains are not wired for stillness or for quietness. They default to focusing on all the bad stuff out there. And so how can you counteract this activity? And for a long time, it was thought to be pretty much impossible. And I found it impossible when I was 13 years old. Now I'm able to do that. But it was all because I abandoned trying to still my mind and simply looked at the science. And the science says there are triggers you can use to tell your body and your mind that there's no predator in the room right now. And so things like that breathing that Angela was doing, that 5-second in, 5-second out rhythm of the breath, that pushes you from the stress end of the nervous system continuum, sympathetic nervous system activation, responding to fight or flight. That rhythmic breathing, 5 seconds or more, pushes you to the parasympathetic end of nervous system function. And so that mechanical act of breathing, you don't have to still your mind, you don't have to think perfect thoughts, you don't have to try and get out of negative ideas or beliefs. All you have to do is breathe at that rhythm and things start to happen in your body. And so I stacked that on top of other evidence-based practices, EFT tapping to release stress, biofeedback, neurofeedback techniques. And then in eco meditation, there's never any instruction to still your mind. All you do is breathe in a certain way, relax certain muscles, have a certain posture. Essentially, you're mimicking the physiology of a master meditator, that Zen monk who spent 40 years in the monastery perfecting this state. When you go into that same physiological state as the Zen master, suddenly, just by physiological cues to your body, you're able to drop into that psychological and spiritual state as well. And that's why people can do this meditation who failed at every other one, just like me. So I'm still a rotten meditator after 50 years. I'm still a terrible meditator. This morning I was meditating before I came on the call, and I was having thoughts about this, thoughts about that. But because I'm in that physiology, I'm having this extraordinary experience of connection with the universe, what I call in Mind to Matter in chapter 1 and chapter 7, letting go of local mind and then tuning into non-local mind. And that is the truth of who we are. We are non-local beings. We are these beings of infinite love and light and joy and creativity. And for a while, 60 years, 70 years, 100 years, 110 years maybe, more and more people are living to 110 and 120 now. And so for that century or so, our consciousness drops down into a human body and we have this human experience. But at the same time, simultaneously, we are the stuff of the infinite. And morning meditation, and I want to really emphasize the importance of doing this first thing in the morning. So in the newer meditations that I'm doing, I'm emphasizing the importance of chronobiology. Chronobiology is an amazing field. It looks at how our bodies change based on the daily rhythms of our cells and of our genes. We have clock genes. Those clock genes wake us up around 4 a.m., 5 a.m. The genes that code for cortisol start to dial up, and you have an increase in cortisol. It reaches its peak around 8 a.m. in the morning, and then it tapers off there throughout the day. So you're most alert around 6, 7 in the morning. And so it's important to meditate then. As soon as you wake up, definitely do not wake up and check your cell phone. Do not wake up and talk to somebody around you. Do not wake up and think about the day ahead. Wake up and immediately move into that elevated sense of oneness with the universe. That's the non-local universe. That's where you came from. You're just here for a little while. And really, whether you got a like to your share does not matter. And certainly is not worth trading that moment of connection with the infinite to relate to your local life. You will have 23 hours to relate to your local life. That first hour, that's when you let go of local reality and tune to infinite non-local reality. And I talk about doing that. That's what opens the way to synchronicities, and it opens the way to extraordinary creativity. When I wrote The Genie in Your Genes, I just finished a period of time, 2 years, working with Bruce Lipton on his book, The Biology of Belief. And I wanted to really take the biology of belief to the next level. So Bruce had talked about how belief conditions gene expression. And at that point, there were a few studies suggesting that spiritual states, emotional states might literally be driving gene expression. So after I finished that cycle of work with Bruce on the biology of belief, I began to collect and gather these ideas, and I had these lightning flashes of creativity. I was also meditating at the time. At that point, I'd been meditating every morning for about 45 minutes or so, and I made that commitment to never skipping a day. I made that commitment when I was 45 years old. And so ever since then, I've been encouraging people to make it when they're 10, 15, 20, 25 years old. Don't wait like I did till you're 45 to make that commitment to daily meditation. Make it the bedrock of your day. So after 5 years, I began to have these extraordinary creative flows. And I realized that our spiritual and psychological experiences are driving our gene expression. Now, that was a big insight. And so I realized that I could write this book, The Genie in Your Genes. It wasn't called that back then. It had a different title. That was actually the title of one of the chapters. And then one of the brilliant friends I had, David Feinstein and Donna Eden, who wrote Energy Medicine, said, Dawson, that shouldn't be a chapter title. That should be the book title. So I had a lot of creative collaborators on the book. And I had this extraordinary creative flow. And I wasn't even in science back then. I had a long career, 25 years in book publishing. And so I was an editor and a publisher. I was the business manager for books. I was not the author. I had no concept of myself as an author or a speaker. And yet suddenly, as I was meditating, I was having these creative flows as I let go of local mind and tuned into non-local mind. So I wrote the book. I spent several years talking about those ideas in The Genie in Your Genes that became to be more and more science, showing that giving us direct evidence that spiritual and emotional states indeed do drive gene expression. And so there became to be a huge flourishing of research in this field. By the time I wrote the second edition in 2008, there were 13 studies showing that those states drive gene expression. By the time I wrote the third edition in 2013, there were hundreds of studies showing that this idea was in fact scientifically true. And so I'd had this enormous moment of channeling the universe and this remarkable idea and this pioneering book. And I would give thanks for this every once in a while. I would say, universe, I'm so grateful that I was there. I was receptive to this impulse of non-local mind. And I wrote this book, and I thought of it as kind of a lifetime achievement. I've written this book. I helped catalyze this conversation. It's affected the lives of millions of people. I'm so grateful that I was able to be the channel for this scientific wisdom in the outer world. I always regarded that. I thought, well, when I die, that'll be when whoever's giving my eulogy gives the eulogy, and they'll mention that he wrote this one amazing book, The Genie in Your Genes. And I had no thought that I'd ever write another book like that. I never thought lightning would strike in the same place twice. I thought that was it. And then one day I was talking to my publisher, Reed Tracy at Hay House, about a follow-up book called Your Happy Genes. And if you go on Amazon, you'll find a book by Dawson Church, Your Happy Genes, scheduled for publication in a few years from now. But I have been working on that project for a while, and I talked to Reed Tracy about it, and he absolutely hated the idea. But he loved the idea of mind to matter. And I've been doing a series of radio shows on mind to matter. So Reed said, that's the book. And suddenly lightning struck again. Within a few months, I talked to my scientific colleagues. I pulled together the information to do with the book. And wow, it was amazing when I began to commit to the idea of finding all the scientific evidence for how our thoughts create reality. I opened the floodgates of information, creativity, and suddenly that book took shape very, very quickly over the course of a few months. And then it was like, wow, lightning struck twice in the same place. I've had two major science books come through me. And again, I have to do all the legwork. I have to go and read all the studies and make all the stuff comprehensible. But the ideas come from non-local mind. And so non-local mind is this source of creativity. And then I began, as I was meditating again, I was now using some really advanced meditation techniques and tools. And now it had been not 5 years like The Genie in Your Genes. At this point, it had been almost 20 years of daily meditation. I found that I already had become a happy person. After 5 years, I was already a happy person. And then I was happier and happier and happier. And then after Mind to Matter, I was meditating, and I could not believe the extraordinary states of bliss I was in, not just occasionally, not just touching them, but every day. I would let go of local mind, tune into non-local mind. And I thought, I feel so good that it's almost like taking drugs. I mean, I feel drugged. I feel so good. Not only that, we found that with eco meditation, that we were having to actually introduce a new component to it at the very end, because people were acting like they were drugged. They were acting like they were totally stoned on THC, and that's the active molecule in marijuana, and psilocybin and ayahuasca. I mean, people were totally stoned. And I began to realize, looking back at Ramakrishna and Rumi and Hafiz and St. Catherine of Siena, that all of these people were describing essentially psychedelic states. I mean, they were truly into psychedelic states, psychoactive states, far beyond ordinary consciousness. And so I looked at the science behind this, and I realized that this one molecule, anandamide, and ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss, drives people into extraordinary drug-like states. It's like they've taken a combination of cocaine and heroin and ayahuasca and psilocybin and THC all at the same time, and they are having this profoundly changed mental state. So the last part of eco meditation does very much what Angela was saying. Open your eyes, look around you, return to ordinary reality. We're having to return people back to non-local mind so they could drive a car. Or calculate the balance in their savings account correctly. So that's what we do now. At the end of this process, people are in these extraordinary states, and we bring them back down. But what I'm going to focus on here before I close this and take questions is, we can reach extraordinary mental states. And you don't need marijuana or THC. You don't need cocaine or heroin. You don't need drugs or alcohol to get there. You can get there by yourself every morning. If you do this first thing in the morning, before you do anything else, you can reach extraordinary mental states. And then you have contact with all the creativity of the universe. During the pandemic, during the financial crash, during periods of social isolation, like I just talked to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he's really suffering from the lack of touch. He is single. He is not with anybody. He doesn't have any kids, and is really suffering from a lack of this acute longing for physical touch. And I can tell you that when you are every day letting go of local mind and blending your consciousness, ascending again to that non-local self that you truly are, you have no shortage of love in your life. In fact, you have so much love pouring down from that non-local reality field that it's actually hard to know where to put it all. It produces an explosion of creativity in your life. I'm working on 3 books at the same time right now. I don't quite know which one to finish first. And they're all remarkable. Like one of them is a book where I just go into that non-local reality field in the mornings, and then I just turn on a recorder and start speaking from that non-local place. Now, this book, I don't know if I could ever publish, because it's so different from the science books I'm known for, that it's just sitting there in my computer. And it's called Living as Yourself, because most people are living under the illusion that they're their local reality. They live mistakenly thinking that local reality is all it is, and it is actual objective reality. And in fact, it's no more than a veneer on real reality. Real reality is vibrational reality. Real reality is energy. Real reality is the space we're in when we tune to non-local mind. And this local reality we live in, and which traps our sense of self, is just a very temporary shifting phenomenon. The thing you're worried about today is not the thing you'll be worried about tomorrow. And the threat that your ancestor faced on Tuesday was different from the one he faced on Monday. So our attention is captured by local reality. And it is so worth making that hour in the morning to tune to non-local reality. You then download all these remarkable things. And that's who you are. As you're able to live as a local reality that is incarnating non-local reality, your whole perspective changes. If you live as non-local reality, temporarily inhabiting a local body and mind, your entire perspective on life is different. And that's where you get to when you elevate your consciousness deliberately in the morning to these non-local states. And that's where creativity comes from. That's where love comes from. You're never lonely because you have all the love of the universe. And I can tell you the universe is absolutely filled with love. The universe is love. The very fabric of the universe is love. And you're never lonely. You're never alone. You're never wanting love. In fact, you're having to try and figure out what to do with all the love that's simply pouring down on your head from non-local reality every day. It is just overwhelming. I mean, your heart just bursts with love every day. And so you walk around after you've done that meditation and your heart is overflowing with love. Like I was on a podcast the other day, and the podcaster was saying, you know, I try and tune into love, and I can most days. And there are some people for whom I just can't feel any love. And so I had to mention a few people that he had a hard time loving. And so we then looked at how to use those people, not just to experience love, but how to trigger love. And so the people that most offend you, the people who most trigger you, the people who most are able to get under your skin and annoy you, you actually begin to use that as a cue, as a mental cue, a conditioned reflex to then bring in that love and fill those relationships with that love. So you suddenly have no shortage of love in your life, and love is profoundly transformative. So you have no shortage of love, no shortage of creativity. There's no such thing as writer's block. There's no such thing as I can't figure out what to do next. Creativity just pours through you, and suddenly, whereas before you struggled to write one book, now you're writing 3 books at the same time. So that's who you are. And then you start to live as yourself in local reality. That interrupts the pattern of local reality and interrupts everything else going on in your life. You walk into the store to buy groceries and you just feel love for the other people there. You walk down the aisles and you're looking at a person standing in the aisle with a grocery cart. Maybe they're blocking the aisle and you can't get by. And you just are filled with love for them. And usually they then notice that you're there and they say, oh, so I'm sorry. And they turn and move just spontaneously. People that annoy you or people that you have a hard time with, and you just love them unconditionally. And then suddenly things start to change in local reality, in local material reality, because of the impact, the love and joy and creativity pouring down through you from non-local reality. That's living as yourself. That's what we came here to live as. That's who we really actually are. So I wanted to, in this brief time with you this morning, I actually tuned into non-local reality and said, what do you want me to say? And that was the result. So I began by sitting here and opening my mouth and having absolutely no idea what would come through. And that's what non-local reality wants you to know, is infinite love awaits you as you identify with who you actually are. As you live as yourself, you become accomplished, you become practiced, you become adept at living as who you are in local reality. And then I can tell you from mind to matter, your local reality completely changes. 25 years ago, I thought I was a book publisher and I had nothing to say. I thought Bruce Lipton, he has something to say. Joe Dispenza, he has something to say. Jack Canfield has something to say. Donna Eden, she has something to say. Marianne Williamson, she has something to say. So I thought they were the people who had something to say, and my job was to amplify what they said by being a good manager in their book projects. Then I discovered that I had something to say, and I began to say it in the best way I possibly could, and then things shift from there. So your outer reality changes as you're living from your inner reality. Mind to matter, you will find astonishing things happening all around you in time as you tune in to this level. And you'll also find the other 23 hours of your day, not the hour of meditation, changing, because the hour of meditation is actually, I'm going to end with this thought, the hour of meditation is actually the least important part of your day in terms of embodying that non-local self and that level of vibrational reality. The most important hours are the other 23 hours of your day. And my friend Andrew Vidic, an amazing mystic who wrote the book Love is a Secret, Andrew calls it the ladder. And he says that if in the other 23 hours of the day you stay high on the ladder, then when you meditate in the 24th hour in the morning, you are already high on the ladder and you don't have very far to climb to inhabit non-local reality. But if during the other 23 hours of the day, you're slipping, you are letting yourself think negative thoughts, you are being casual about positive thinking, you are swearing, you are, maybe eating junk, drinking water that isn't pure, you're doing things in your mind and your body that are dragging you down the ladder. You're giving in to annoyance or frustration or guilt or resentment or blame or any one of the many negative emotions there are. If you aren't being rigorous, if you're slipping down the ladder, then you have a long way to climb when you start that hour meditation. But if you stay high on the ladder, and I talk about this in Bliss Brain, there's an illustration of a ladder. This is a talk I had with Andrew in a coffee shop in New York, but it made its way and became a chapter in Bliss Brain. Stay high on the ladder, and then you don't have to climb many rungs up in that hour of communion with non-local reality. You're already there. And then all the blessings of non-local reality easily flow into your local reality. So a couple of, besides Mind to Matter, which I mentioned, Bliss Brain, my newest book, that book I mentioned by Andrew Vidic, it's a brilliant book. I'll put it in chat, or maybe someone else will just find it and put it in chat on Amazon or maybe on a couple of different sites, independent booksellers as well. I like to walk over to my local bookseller, Copperfields. They'll have a book waiting for me there outside the front door if I want it. So, a way of supporting your local independent bookseller. But that book is called Love is a Secret by Andrew Vidic. And the other book I want to recommend as far as staying high on the ladder is Paul Brunton's book, The Short Path to Enlightenment. And that book is really valuable and helps you stay on that high point on the ladder. I'm actually working now on a new project, and one of my writing projects is a book based on Paul Brunton's book, The Short Path, and this new series from Mind Valley that's coming out. It's called Mind of the Master. It'll train you to evoke each of those 7 neurochemicals of bliss, stack them on each other. So the second book is The Short Path to Enlightenment by Paul Brunton, Brunton. And Paul Brunton wrote about 36 books in the 1930s, and he collected the wisdom of the East in the series of books. And I got to tell you, they're hard to read. They're not easygoing, but the Short Path book is a collection of his sayings edited by one of his students, a man called Jeff Cox. And Jeff and I are actually collaborating now on an online course based on Paul Brunton's The Short Path book. So it's a really good guide full of practical tips to getting to that state. And so Angela's put the link over there in chat to The Short Path. And then the other book is Love is a Secret by Andrew Vidic, another book I really recommend. Andrew's been a friend of mine for over 40 years. And Andrew is I don't get in trouble for saying this, but he is, I've watched him for 40 years, and when I want to talk to an enlightened person, I go talk to Andrew. He's living there every moment of every day. He never goes anywhere else. And a talk with Andrew Vidic is extraordinary. And so you'll find actually a link to an interview with Andrew Vidic in, I think, chapter 4, or maybe chapter 5 of Bliss Brain. So in Bliss Brain, I talk about Andrew's work. The ladder idea comes from him. He's also collaborating with me and Jeff Cox on the Short Path online course we're building now. So that's for the future. But you can get the essence of this in that book, The Short Path to Enlightenment by Paul Brunton. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for tuning in and setting the stage with that wonderful meditation from Angela, and then making yourself available to your higher self, to your non-local self, and the possibility of channeling your non-local self and living as your non-local self, which is who you actually are every single day. So appreciate that, and I'll happily answer questions before we wrap it up.
Thank you so much. That was truly, truly incredible. You're such a special person. And before we go on, I just want to thank Emily again for recommending Dawson, and Jennifer from your team, who's been incredible to work with. A bunch of us have read your books on Audible as a group, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. I just wanted to ask first to kick us off. I work with a lot of people that like are still struggling, and I was curious just to hear about if you had a specific spiritual awakening, or was it something that was just always with you? Like, what set you on this journey?
I talk about that a little bit in Bliss Brain, and I begin the book with the fire and my house burning down and the California wildfires, the office burning down. And I start the book off in that place. And I think one of the reasons that my wife, Christine, and I did so well in the fire, and even though it was a life-threatening situation and we lost everything materially in the course of that, was that we were resilient and we had the brain architecture of resilience in place already. So we spent many, many years developing that. And when disaster hits, and disaster is going to hit all of us, I mean, we're all going to get sick at some point. It might be a financial disaster, it could be a health disaster, it could be a relationship disaster. We probably all had a relationship disaster, or perhaps more than one. So we've had these multiple disasters, and we never know when they'll strike. And if you are a resilient person, then you have not just the habit of resilience and not just the mental state of resilience, you have the hardware of resilience. And so I begin the book in that place, but the process of developing resilience began decades earlier. And I write in Bliss Brain about how when I was 12, 13, 14, I was actually reading people like Paul Brunton and Jiddu Krishnamurti and others, not with a lot of understanding of them. And it takes a while before you comprehend what those kinds of authors are saying. But one day when I was in my early teens, I was very depressed. I was toxically depressed. In fact, I invented social distancing. Now we're supposed to be 6 feet away from each other. Well, when I was 12, 13, 14, people could literally not stand to be around me. I had such toxic depression. I had such a heavy energy that people literally avoided me. I had no friends. People would like stand ways away from me to avoid being in the cloud of gloom that enveloped me. And Eckhart Tolle has a wonderful 2-word description of that. He says it's called the pain body. And there are people who have a pain body. Meet some people who have severe psychological illnesses, and you'll feel that pain body when you're 6 feet away from them. I mean, it's tangible. And then one day I was in my bedroom after school in high school, and I had suddenly, I don't know what triggered this, but I suddenly had this experience. I flipped into the state of consciousness in which I saw the whole universe and experienced it as love. And I didn't have a lot of love or feelings of love in my life, but I suddenly just looked into the fabric of the universe and realized the universe is love. And so I had that formative experience, and nothing around me was available to reinforce that. There was no one I could talk to. I thought I was the only person in the world that had that experience, because I can tell you no one else I knew had a lot of love in their external material local world. And I was all alone. I had no idea what to do with this. The church and religion seemed to have very little place for that kind of mystical experience. Now, of course, we realize that there's a rich Christian mystical tradition that's making a comeback. And in Eastern Orthodoxy and Christianity, for example, they've been valuing mystical states for a long time, although there's a ton of theological crud sort of stuck to the outside of that experience. But Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, all of those religions have an idea of this experience. So I had that experience. That was really, I remembered that. It was so powerful. I've never forgotten it. And that's what these experiences are and have. And so now Andrew Newberg, for example, my wonderful friend, he wrote the book how enlightenment changes your brain. And he's collected the stories of over 2,000 people who've had these experiences, enlightenment type experiences. Now, this is not enlightenment with a big E, the enlightenment that changes you forever. This is a small E enlightenment experience. You have these small E moments, epiphanies, but people are having them all the time, and there's no one they can talk to. They don't even talk to their son or their daughter or their parent or their wife or their husband. They just there's no cultural sanction for this in our society. We don't, when juniors start high school, we don't question them and say, have you had an enlightened experience? But a lot of them have. And there's no structural place for it in our society. So that's the experience. All of us virtually have had these experiences, and then you want to cultivate these experiences and not just make them a temporary glimpse. You want to turn them into a permanent mental state. So mine was around 13, and then 14, 15, I was reading a lot of spiritual books. I was involved in the New Thought churches, which have some sense of this as a reality. The New Thought churches basically are saying that we are beings of light, we are beings of spirit inhabiting a human body, and that's their theology. They have no time for the devil or for hell. Jesus, by the way, never talked about the devil or hell either. It's an invention of subsequent church hierarchies that try to keep people stuck and in place and controllable. So there's these elevated states, and so we're all having them, and you want to cultivate those and have them become your dominant reality. So we all have that, and that's where it began for me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's so powerful to someone who might be walking alone like you were to hear, and here at Quantum Healing Collective, we're doing our best to try to make enlightenment cool. So
that's your motto. Let's make enlightenment cool.
Yeah, here at QHC Enlightenment. Yeah, that's the coolest. So I see Angela has her hand up. Thank you for that answer.
That's really awesome. That's our new tagline for sure. Cool enlightenment. Dr. Church, thank you so much. You kind of radiate out through the screen, and I really needed it. And just you talking has been kind of like a soothing balm for me today, and I really appreciate you being here. It's interesting, at the time I was listening actually to Bliss Brain, I was also studying starting to look into the hero's journey. And Kyle, I can only see you. I can't see Dr. Church on the speaker view. I don't know. Anyway, and I felt like it was interesting that those two things were happening at the same time, because I feel like that was what you were going through. I feel like the fire and that whole experience you went through was like a hero's journey. You know what I mean? Do you like the thing you went through, and then coming out on the other side, and your resilience to this incredibly traumatic event was so inspiring, because as I look back at my own life, and I've had lots of traumas, and I see how they've affected me for decades to come, and it's like so I'm really working hard on my on my own connection and resilience, to let things like what you went through. I mean, that was just an incredible experience, and that you made it through with your incredible resilience. What I would like to ask, I guess, is what message would you have for when you're facing the unknown, when you're facing, you not necessarily in a traumatic event, but when there's nothing, you're facing the unknown, about to walk off the cliff, because it's because for me, I know this is what I need to do. I need to walk off the cliff, but there's no safety net. There's no money. There's nothing lined up. I'm about to walk into the abyss, which is kind of like, I'm sure you've done it.
Terrifying.
So I would love to know what advice you have, because I struggle with the fear every day. I try to bring myself back to love, but it's scary. It's a scary place to be in. And I would love to, hear what you might say about that.
That's a great question. What do you do when you're facing the unknown? And I want to actually not answer that to start with. And I want to go back to what you said about the traumas of the past. And so when I was living in a spiritual community at 15 and being exposed to the perennial philosophy and these great authors, these great books, these great ideas, their theology, their teaching was that, we all have stuff in our past that's miserable and traumatic. But when we enter the Sangha in Buddhism, the community of people, when we dedicate ourselves to right livelihood, then we transcend all of that. And that was the teaching then, is that you move up the ladder, and you inhabit this high space on the ladder. And a lot of teachings are like that. In fact, in ancient times, people would go into the convent or the monastery, and simply their idea was that it's not even possible to really get anywhere spiritually if you're in the world. You have to actually remove yourself to another place. We didn't have to deal with kids and diapers and bills and all of the stuff of life. You have to go to a monastery and live there the rest of your life, take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and then you can start the spiritual journey. So that was the old model of this. And that was kind of the equivalent mapped onto modern experience for me in the spiritual community. They said, you don't have to go deal with all the trouble of your past, all that emotional trauma. You just transcend it all, and you live in this self-transcendent place. And so research in PTSD has now shown that that is completely false. You absolutely do have to go and deal with your trauma. And I don't know how many of you, probably some of you are aware of the scandals that have happened in Buddhism in the last 3 years or so, with huge teachers being shown to be having been abusing their students. Andrew Harvey, the great mystic who wrote the book The Direct Path to Enlightenment, he did a previous book with an enormously influential Buddhist teacher who was then discovered molesting his students. And that's not unique to Buddhism. I mean, many probably know that John of God, this guy who was this faith healer in Brazil for the last 40 years, enormously influential. John of God, people worshipped him, idolized him, traveled to Brazil to get healings from him, and is now in jail, accused of molesting about 700 of his female students. Christianity, we've now said, just had recently in the last year, had the scandal of not Jerry Falwell, whatever his son's name is, Falwell of Liberty University. I mean, Christianity, Jimmy Swaggart a generation ago, again, caught spending time with prostitutes. In every single, look at cults, look at, Osho, and that whole thing that blew up in the 80s. And wherever you go, these spiritual teachings and teachers, Gangaji and her husband, and the sexual scandals there, and the financial scandals somewhere else. I mean, that is what happens when you don't heal trauma. When you go to the transcendent place, become this holy person, and meanwhile, festering in the basement, there's all this manure that hasn't been dug out and cleared. It turns into the dark side, and the dark side then has a way of interrupting all of that stuff. So you absolutely have to go and do the trauma healing work first. You have to go in there and heal trauma. In this new course I'm building on the short path, we actually don't let people take it until they've done a trauma healing course first. So you have to go there and work on those traumas. But you can heal them very, very quickly. With EFT, I had a whole career in researching psychological trauma, developing the standard of clinical EFT. And when we work with veterans, for example, in the Veteran Stress Project, it takes 6 one-hour sessions. And there are levels of flashbacks, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, all the symptoms of trauma, those diminished by an average of 65% in only 6 one-hour sessions. And these are highly traumatized people. And so we've done this now with victims of gender violence in the Congolese Civil War. We've done this with people who survived the Rwandan Holocaust in 1994. We've done this trauma work with a ton of different populations, and it really works. So the wonderful, hopeful thing now is that you can heal trauma. It doesn't take a long time. And we actually built this new platform called the Tapping Place. And you go on Tapping Place, there are trained trauma-informed practitioners there who work with you on that and just tap with you, use EFT. And again, in a few sessions, you dramatically change your trauma profile, and a lot of those symptoms go away. So it is necessary to heal trauma. And there's a brilliant neuroscientist called James Hart of BioCybernaut. He says that if people embark on the short path, on the spiritual journey, without healing that trauma, then they are going to have a dark night of the soul experience. They'll be plunged into the dark night of the soul. Even if they transcend, often that dark side will remain there festering and then emerge to bite them in later years. So trauma healing is necessary. That's the thing you said. I said I didn't want to answer your question about addressing that. You have to heal trauma. So we are requiring people to do the trauma healing course, work with practitioners on tappingplace.com before they are even allowed to start on that journey. And then as far as the void goes and the unknown goes, Paul Brunton likens it to crossing a huge river. And he says, you see a stepping stone, and you step onto that stepping stone, and you have no idea how you're going to get across the river. But from the one stepping stone, you see only one thing, which is the next stepping stone. So you step there, and then from there, you step on the next stepping stone. You still have no idea where the river is going to take you or how to get across, but you do see the next stepping stone. And so very often in my life, all I see is the next stepping stone. Often I don't even see the next stepping stone. I meditate, and then we'll meditate 2 or 3 more days, then you'll see the next stepping stone. You take that step, and you have no idea where this is going, and then you take the next step. So a lot of our lives are spent living in the mystery, and the trick is to get comfortable living there. And when you are tuning into non-local reality, you know there's the great grand plan in non-local reality. You don't have to know it. You don't have to know where the river ends. You simply have to surrender to the non-local reality and see if it knows where it's going, and then you take the next step. Now, the really disturbing part of this is not only do you not know non-local reality when you're in local reality, you don't know where non-local reality is going. When you tune into non-local reality doesn't know where it's going either. You tune into the universe asking for answers, and where is this whole thing going? And the universe says, we're just working with a whole configuration of galactic universal consciousness for the highest possible result. We don't know either. But when one person awakens in Calcutta, and somebody else awakens in Singapore, and somebody else awakens in Novosibirsk in Russia, and then maybe somebody's going to awaken in Nome, Alaska, and suddenly the whole universal reality shifts a little tiny bit. I'm going to work with that, and that's different from the way it was yesterday. So actually, there is no great, grand, universal plan other than things moving forward generally in a positive direction. And you look back at the last century and say, World War I, World War II, how could those have been possible? I mean, the Syrian war has displaced more people than any other war since World War II. So how can that be a positive movement forward for humankind? How can the recession, how can the pandemic be a positive movement forward? And we don't know. We don't know the answers to these big questions. But you simply can align yourself with that source of love every day, and then you see the next stepping stone. And for me, I've been living in the unknown for the last 1.5 years or so, working on the Short Path project. I say, well, Spirit, how will what will this become in the next while? Is this the next book? Should I turn this into a book? And the answer is, just do the very next stepping stone thing you see right in front of you right now, and just trust that the whole thing is working out for the highest good. Also, at the end of Bliss Brain, I have that chapter. That's just one chapter. And I had to pick from hundreds of studies, and I picked only 12. And they show that we're in the middle of this enormous evolution of human flourishing in terms of every possible metric you can imagine: health metric, intelligence metric, IQ metrics, financial metrics. We are moving in a positive direction. And you look at, the some of the bad things that have happened in the world. You'll say, well, how is that positive? If you step back and look at the big picture, we are in this enormous upward trajectory as a human species. And if you look at the number of meditators in the world, 1% in 1980, 4% in 2004, 14% in 2015. I mean, we are in this remarkable upward spiral in consciousness as a human species. And even though when there are race riots and political turmoil and recessions and pandemics and all these things, the step back, zoom out to the 30,000 foot view, and you see that in the aggregate over time, we actually are in this huge upward spiral of consciousness. So being confronted with the void, Angela, is terrifying. It's so scary not knowing where the river takes you, where the stepping stones are leading. And yet you can live in complete security as yourself in the arms of that being. I feel sometimes literally meditation as though I'm being cradled in the arms of love. It's like the universe is there just holding me with infinite love. And that's all I need to know, being cradled in that place. And who knows what might happen? There might be a fire. There might be an economic crash. There could be huge financial loss. There could be death, divorce, disease, any one of a number of things. And if you're cradled in the arms of the universe, that is your bedrock of reality. And then you trust that that is there for you. And there's no need to know in the external sense what will happen. But I can tell you that things that show up in the external sense tend to be utterly wonderful when you are living that abandoned life. You're living this, you're dancing with abandon, not knowing where the universe is bringing you. And as you dance your dance every moment, every day, it tends to bring you into pretty wonderful places.
Thank you. If I ever meet you in person, I would like a hug, please. Thank you so much. It's a lot of comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I see Joe's hand up. Go ahead, brother.
Dawson, I am incredibly grateful for everything that you've talked about, said, and all the work that you're doing, because I am absolutely... every time we do these meetings, I don't think my mind's going to get blown any more than it already has, but it just continues to get blown, my friend. It's insane. So thank you, first off, for that. So my question relies on this, because one thing you talked about that, and I'm a stickler for routines. You talked about waking up and having that morning meditation, something I value very much. As you've probably seen, possibly through the meeting, I've had my little daughter running in and out of the frame here. And some days, and especially recently, I've not been able to do my morning meditations and routines. And I've noticed that like you talked about, that ladder effect. I didn't fall off in a way where I went really far down, but I went to a place where you definitely, like, you lose a little, you get shorter and all that stuff. Is there actually, can you actually like accrue a, like almost like a battery? Can you charge it to a point where it's pretty charged up? And then if you have, like, 'cause some days I actually get anxiety about the fact that I can't get my meditation done, and I'm worried that I'm going to dip off all the way. But I'd like to take comfort in possibly that there's maybe just a little loss in the battery and not a whole drop in the battery. Yeah. So is there any science or something behind that you might be able to speak to?
Yeah, and when that routine is really valuable, because we have a certain amount of cognitive ability, and if we have too much cognitive load, then it overwhelms our ability to respond creatively. So you want to reduce your cognitive load. Why do you think Steve Jobs wore a black sweater and black pants and black shoes every single day? He didn't want to have to use part of his precious cognitive load processing ability on picking a wardrobe and making clothes match. If you look at a lot of high performers, look at Tony Robbins, look at Joe Dispenza, look at a lot of the people who are doing peak performance, they have a series of routines, and the routines handle almost all of their regular activities. So you want to really make your routine as stable as possible. That is an extremely good approach. So you're right on target in having all those habits. And then when you have those habits, if they slip once in a while, then that's fine. Just, like I, for example, don't eat sugar usually. I don't really have much of a sweet tooth. But occasionally I'll have an ice cream or I'll have a candy bar, and I'll really enjoy falling that one rung down the ladder. And I'll know that, I won't eat 10 candy bars and I won't eat a candy bar every day, but I'll really actually enjoy that. Or I might do something like, and I normally exercise every day, and there are days my body says no exercise, and that's fine. I meditate on days I'm super busy or I'm traveling or something. I sometimes can squeeze in only 5 or 10 minutes of meditation. And I have to be very careful and set a timer, because I'll tend to get lost up there and then look at my watch and it's an hour later and I missed an appointment. That's possible too. But that you want to, again, that routine is lessening your cognitive load. So you have all your cognitive abilities available to you for the really important stuff. And so it's not a problem. In fact, at some point, indulge. Go eat an entire pizza. I was on a retreat this last month, and I don't normally eat wheat, but I just went and bought a huge, enormous, extra large pizza, and man, I love that pizza. It was so good. It was just dripping with oil and cheese and meat and pepperoni and huge thick crust, all the stuff I normally like. I just loved eating that pizza. I ate 2 slices. I thought, I can't really eat the rest of it. What do I do with this? So I drove down to the local spot where homeless people hang out, and I walked in my big box of pizza and gave it to this guy in a wheelchair. It was like his face lit up, and he shared it with the homeless people there. And it's like, so what? Did I gain a pound? I don't know. I don't even care. I mean, so you don't take even your failures seriously. Like I have things I don't do. I don't do well. We all have things we do superbly, and then we all have things we just suck at. And it's just a fact. You just suck at this particular part of life, or this particular activity. And you just say, I love you and adore you unconditionally, despite the fact that you absolutely suck at mathematics or music or skiing or like for me, that's one thing. In my 60s, I cannot ski anymore. And so I do other things, mountain biking and paddleboarding and kayaking, but I just skiing's kind of fallen away. So I could be like, darn, you got to work yourself up, condition yourself to be able to go ski again, or say, I'm fine paddleboarding. And so you start to let yourself off the hook. You fall down the ladder. You go out one night with friends and have tequila, and you get plastered. You get hammered, and the next day you feel terrible. You have a hangover, and you say, I love and accept myself unconditionally, and I'm just going to affirm my self-love despite having had those shots of tequila last night. So you just start to take life a whole lot less seriously. You slip on some things often, you slip on some things occasionally. And what really is counting here is you're filling yourself with unconditional love of self. I love myself. I love my local self as much as non-local self loves my local self. I love myself as much as the universe loves me. I can tell you the universe is not looking down there and saying, you schmuck, you shouldn't have had that tequila. The universe never ever has that thought. The only thought the universe has for us, it enfolds us in love the way we take a baby and we just say, I love you unconditionally and fully. That's the way the universe loves us. And our job as local selves is to love ourselves, love ourselves just as much.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
Great question, Joe. I
Thanks,
see Claudia's hand up. We'll go to Claudia.
Hi, Dawson.
Hi, Claudia.
I feel like I know you because I've been listening to Bliss Brain, and I feel like I already know you in your wonderful laugh. So it's fun. Just to Joe's point, I'm very similar to him in the sense where like my meditation practice had to be arduous. It had to be an hour long. If I missed it, I failed. I was like all the things that Joe just talked about, I've experienced. And I have to say that your book, Bliss Brain, has completely restructured the way I think about meditation and made it so much easier. And I'm calling it meditation for dummies. I hope that you don't take that in the wrong way. But it's just completely changed the game for me. And I want to just to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. Maybe I haven't seen you up there in meditation land too. So yeah.
We've been hanging out. So thank you. That's all.
I really do feel that, when I meditate in the morning, I move to non-local and I can feel everyone else in non-local. In fact, we can do a little experiment right now. If we just tune into our hearts and be in that same place that Angela brought us to initially, and then I close every one of my group meetings with this, with my community, especially during the pandemic when we couldn't see each other. But then you take your sense of selfhood from being local and in your heart, and then just reach your hands out and literally reach them out now and just imagine touching hands with everyone here, and you'll feel your fingertips glowing, your palms becoming really tingly, and you can literally feel the connection with everyone else here. It's so interesting. We're geographically distant, and yet if you do this, you can literally feel that energetic connection and consciousness with everyone. So feel it now. Stay there for a moment. And now double that signal in strength. Deliberately, consciously make it stronger. So you actually feel it getting stronger. Now bring your hand back to your body, let go, relax, and bring it back into your heart, because one of the things that I really teach is that it's incredibly valuable to connect this way energetically, and we need to have boundaries. You need to also be able to detach. It's important to attach, and it's equally important to be able to detach and bring your energy all the way back into yourself. And we're energetically enmeshed with all kinds of people. You need to detangle yourself and then know how to come entirely back into your own energy field, into your own body. So we end that way in our own bodies. It's delicious to attach and connect, and yet it's equally important to learn to not start to rely on that for our well-being. So we have to detach as well, come into our own little bubble, and then affirm our sovereignty, our own unique agency within our own energy field. So that's the way we attach, and that's the way we energetically detach and come back into ourselves.
That is fantastic. I think we're gonna, if it's okay with you, adopt that here into our meeting. I really enjoyed that. I felt you hold my hand, Joe. That was cool. Do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
All right. I see Leah with her hand up, and then we'll close right after that.
Thank you so much. I feel like I just touched everybody's hand, and that was so good. So I'm really loving Bliss Brain. So thank you for that. And thank you for everything you said here today. My question is, it's specifically applying to writing, but anything that's a big creative project, the path from inspiration to execution. And I know that you will say the meditation part, because obviously you're the meditation guy, and you're going to say to start with that. But I wonder what your routines and patterns are to keep you on track to execute something big like a book. Do you just let things flow, or do you tell yourself you're going to write from this time to this time. How do you do it to be so prolific?
You need some structure as well. So you're right that it begins with meditation. It begins with tuning in to non-local, and there are all those ideas in non-local. And then you need to give it enough time. And again, this is not just my experience or theory. I'm basing this on research. So you need a block of time. And that block of time is more than an hour. It's a block of 30 minutes is not a big enough block of time. It needs to be at least 90 minutes and preferably 4 hours. When I wrote Mind to Matter, again, I've written both Mind to Matter and Bliss Brain under very tight deadlines. And then I said to my wife after Bliss Brain, because Bliss Brain was after the fire, we were, for the next year, we were struggling to, put our household back together, and we had a lot of things going on. I said to her often, I'm never going to write a book like again under that kind of time pressure. So blocks of time are important. Like, for example, there was 1 week I was supposed to teach at Esalen Institute in California, and there was a mudslide. The road was closed, Esalen was closed. So suddenly I had a week off. I had my calendar cleared, and then suddenly I had that whole week free. So I woke up every morning that week, and I spent about 2 hours really getting deep into meditation. Then I sat down on my computer and I wrote from about 6 a.m. to about 6 p.m. And then at 6 p.m., I then took a shower and had breakfast. Behind my head. And I did that for not only the 7 days I was supposed to be at Esalen, but for the following weekend as well. So I had a 9-day stretch, and I had a 12-hour cycle. And you'll find out what your cycles are. And you might not know what you're going to write about. If you just start writing something, whatever's in your head, there's a wonderful English word not used much nowadays called catenation. And catenation is the process of one thought leading to another thought, leading to another thought. So you'll begin just writing whatever's uppermost in your mind right now, especially if you're writing from non-local. Non-local is, the issue isn't our ability to receive inspiration from non-local. The ability is our ability to pay attention to non-local, because non-local is always waiting there, looking for people who are available to it to work through. And so if you start to signal non-local, and that's what meditation is, especially everyday consistent meditation, is a signal to non-local, hey, here I am. And, in my case, I'm not the most brilliant person. I'm not the best writer. I'm not, I don't have the most orderly mind. I don't have the best credentials. I don't have the best education, but I am consistent. I'm just showing up there every day in class. I'm like the student, and so the non-local looks at me and says, oh, this Dawson Church guy, he's a little bit slow, it's not, you kind of look at the guy's mind. It's not really a first-rate, kind of a second-rate mind, and but he's showing up in class every single day. And man, that kid has his hand raised, is saying, "Hey, will you teach me?" And so that counts for a lot. That counts for more than brilliance. They're brilliant people who don't accomplish a whole lot and don't manifest a whole lot. If you just show up every day, showing up every day is important, and showing up regularly, and then blocks of time. So I would recommend setting aside 4 hours, no phone, no kids, no interruption, no husband, no alerts, and then giving that after meditation. So meditate first, then a 4-hour block. Now again, 90 minutes is a minimum. My natural flow, and you'll get to know what your natural number is. Mine is 10 hours. My workday is 10 hours long. That just works with my chronobiology. After 10 hours, I can tell you, when I used to work in a physical office, my team, people would say, don't ask Dawson any questions after 5 o'clock. He is brain dead. He will tell you he has nothing to say. And it's true. After 10 hours, I have no blood, no brain glucose left. I'm just, I can't figure out how to put my watch on. So that's just my cycle. Maybe yours is 12 hours. Maybe yours is 6 or 8 hours. Respect your own natural pace. But give yourself that block of time, meditate, tune in, start writing anything, any idea that comes to your head. And I can tell you that for me, a lot of the stuff that I first write is it's like if you have a drain pipe that's been clogged for a long time, a pipe that's been clogged for a long time. You know how when you turn on the water, walk into a room where no one's turned on the faucet for a year, you turn on the faucet and the water is really gross at first, and then it flows clean after that. Or after your plumber has done some work, or the city has fixed the water main and you turn on the water and it's all gross, and then it's clear after a while. Often the first stuff you write, maybe you get really enchanted with it, but it's not all that good. So it takes writing for a while for the clarity to start. When I wrote the second edition, there were 2 chapters in the first edition of Genie in Your Genes that I was the most proud of. I liked those chapters the best. I thought they were my best work. By the time of the second edition, 5 years later, I actually deleted both those chapters. They were not that good. They were stuff I was proud of 5 years before, and actually were not that good. I learned a lot. So your first quarter is just for the purpose of getting the flow going. You write just to get the water going. You may love it, but you'll come back to it in a year or two and you'll say, no, delete. But it's what's required to get the clear water coming in. So start writing, be open to non-local, and when non-local has a channel it can flow through, it'll start to use you. You'll get more coming through. That's when the really clear and good content starts to just appear spontaneously.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you
look forward
so
to reading your
much.
book, Leah.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawson.
What did
that
you
was my
say?
favorite meeting. Oh, go ahead.
I look forward to reading your book.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you.
heck yeah.
Yes. I love the
Yeah.
idea of that.
That's beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Dawson. That was such an incredible meeting. If you ever have anybody that you think would want to use this platform to get that word out, we would always honor, any recommendations you have. So thank you so much for your time. What we do now is we close with a prayer, and Angela's going to close us out. And I think what we should do when she starts to read the prayer, let's adopt a new, all lift our hands up and see if we can link up. So.
Great. Thank you, Dawson. Your willingness to come here gives life, gives energy to our collective that we're trying to grow. Thank you so much. I've posted all of our links in chat, and all of this can be found on the Facebook page too if anybody is new. And there's a simple Google Doc, which is also in our Facebook announcements to get on our mailing list. So please check us out, come again, and we are very grateful to all of you for attending today. So yes, let's reach out our hands and touch the fingers or the hands if you're comfortable, and create our connection as we dedicate the merit of this meeting to all those who are awakening at this precious time. May our efforts to better ourselves help shift the planetary consciousness from fear into love. May this energy ripple out into the world and awaken those with closed hearts, illuminate closed minds, and inspire all to live within the presence of compassion and generosity.